All right, I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. All right, I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. Okay, there you go, you can. All right. Okay, there you go, you can. Okay, what was this to me? Okay, there you go, you can. Hello. Hello. All right, thank you for joining me. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. I hear an echo, and it's probably because I have more than one device on. I am going to go ahead and get started. And I just wanted to say hello to everyone that joined me and welcome to. Yep, I believe so. All right. Again, welcome to my channel where I discuss my steps to discovering my ancestors and their whereabouts on this earth. Because of my research involving locations of other people, events, and occurrences, I often will take the time to continue to research and share the information or my findings, whether it is personal or not, as long as it is in regards to ancestry and genealogy. Some of you and I already follow each other on TikTok, and I want to say thank you for joining me. You have been communicating with me through the live chat and leaving comments, so I appreciate that. And then someone also was able to tell me what they could relate to in the podcast, and I also appreciate that as well. So I just want to say thank you for joining me here at the live. Those who are new, hopefully this catches on. Thank you for joining me, and please subscribe to the channel. All right. The lives are for basically following up on any information that I post about and or create a live or a TikTok live about. And my most recent information was actually about the Potawatomi tribe and any personal findings regarding the Illinois, not Indiana, but Illinois Indian tribes and tribal lands of Illinois. If you've been following me, you'll see that I was able to be in Thornton, which is a township south of Cook County. And I think it includes Dalton. Well, I know because I lived in Dalton for over 13 years. So Thornton Township includes Dalton, Burnham, South Highland, Calumet City. Oh, I almost said Chicago Heights. Harvey, Robbins. I think Thornton, Illinois, which is a little bit southeast of there, Lansing. And actually is in that area, which is Indian Territory. So some of my lives and some of the research that's already at TikTok explains that those findings, specifically what I'm going to go in two directions here. I initially was researching land patterns for a relative. I also knew about my search on the on BLM, which is Bureau of Land Patterns, or Bureau of Land Management for land patterns. I had saw that you could search, of course, Illinois, and then narrow it down to Cook County, and then that is where I was able to see at least I think about 5 tribes. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and go into one of the land patterns. Give me one moment. But what was interesting is the tribes that came up, and I did not know that they were anything about the specific tribes of Illinois, and Potawatomi is one of them. I knew about all the different cities: Kankakee, Moni, Des Plaines, um, uh, city of Milwaukee in Wisconsin. I knew about all of this being Indian territory. This is just a few of the names that I'm mentioning. Peoria, Wheaton, all of that is Indian territory. So I knew about that, but I didn't never focus on any tribes being in Illinois, because majority of the states outside of Illinois have Indian reservations. So I did learn about Indian, Tecumseh and a few other of the tribes, or the few other occurrences, Osceola as well, who were in many of the Indian wars. So I did know about that in grammar school. And I knew about Sauk Trail and Sauk Village. But when I went into those land patterns, I actually did not know. It just, I didn't know about the tribes. So I'm trying to still go into a Bureau of Land Management now. And I'm gonna bring it up to give you an idea of what actually the tribal names are. Let me switch over from the screen that I am in. I don't know if it's going to allow me to bring up another one. It actually only allows one at a time. All right, so I'm going to go into the Bureau of Land Management. As you can see, it is here. While doing genealogy, if you're already have a tree growing at ancestry.com or myheritage.com, wherever you have your tree at, they'll give you hints if that ancestor or that person has land. Doesn't necessarily mean tribal land, but if they have land, on land. But there are specific reasons why they came up with this Bureau of Land Management, and it is because it was already tribal land. So they have to keep up with who purchased land, who received Indian allotments, that sort of purpose for it. So I am going to go into the land patterns here. I don't know why that it's down there. They're broken. All right, there we go. All right, so that tab that says learn services, I'm going to scroll down to land records, click land records, scroll down to probably the first paragraph under general land office records. And if you could follow me, that way you have an idea of how to search land patterns. I'm going to click check out the GLO, which is General Land Office Records website. And then excuse me, you see the home icon to the left. I'm going to click search documents. This is where you begin to see the information that you need to insert into the fields to search the documents. All right, so this first tab says search documents by type, search documents by location, and the location is usually longitude and latitude, I believe. So you actually have to have the actual that type of land description, and then location by identifier. All right, so I use search documents by type. Here you'll see location, state, and county. I want to continue to tell you what information is on here. And as you can see here, it says how to do the search. I'm going to read it for you. To search for land patterns, one, start by selecting a state. Two, you do not have to fill in all fields, and I don't. So you're going to see me skip around in these fields and only enter the information that I really want to enter. And three, click the search patterns button. That is at the bottom of the page. Okay, let you see some more information. Names, last name and first name, middle name, which would be, you know, your surnames and or full names. Sometimes I don't enter first names. I only utilize last names. I don't enter any township or land description information. If you go to the right where it says miscellaneous, I never use this at all, so I have no idea what this actually is. I'll look that up. And then here is where you see any tribe. So I click on the tribe. Right now, with Alabama automatically being populating in that state location field, the three tribes that the BLM have land patterns for would be the tribe of Choctaw, Creek, and Creek tribe. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click one. I am my mother's grandmother is a Creek, Cowada Creek from Georgia, and that whole Berry Hill lineage has what do you call that? Has the Census Rolls and the Indian tribal recognition. We however, do not. Those of us that are in Chicago. Now, I do know some of my great-grandmother, some of the tribal members lived in Oklahoma, and they are of the Choctaw tribe, but originally it would have been the Tuscarora tribe. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Creek. This is the search patterns button is orange. You can't miss it. And these are the land patterns that come up. That's not a lot. Usually down here at the bottom, you'll see like 1 through 50 or next or whatever else. So these are the land patterns. What's interesting is who owns the patterns. The Bank of State of Alabama, that lets you know, and it's only one name, which means that whoever this is probably did not claim their land, and the bank is holding the assets. Chopco, that lets me know that those are Indian names. If we go above here where you see my cursor, it says Bank of State of Georgia. That is a indigenous name, Nar Par Lar Hadho. Now, if anyone that is studying indigenous or Amerindian tribes, you'll know that Hadjo is one of the original Indian chiefs, and they actually control a whole lot, meaning they are running the Omaha government. They deal directly with the government, and that was passed on to them via their ancestors, which is one of the at the time the original agents that worked with the European colonizers to help to remove the indigenous from their lands. And so, just so you know, Hadho and like McIntosh, who else? Martin, Berry Hill, those, they helped to remove many of the indigenous and their own relatives at that, because the colonizer did have children with the indigenous women after they fought their tribes, or they end up kidnapping them and taking them and impregnating them to whitewash the tribe. So if you see there, you see nothing but Indian names. Now, how I ended up, what this actual live will be about is some Illinois findings. I'm going to go ahead and populate the Illinois state. I'm going to search for Cook County. You'd be surprised what is in Kankakee County as well. I haven't really been in the other counties. I know Iroquois is near Kankakee. It begins behind where my great-grandmother's property was. So I haven't even searched there, but I will do that at another time as well. But I'm going to go back up, go to Cook County. Before I really get into everything, I'm not going to do any name search. I'm going to go over here to tribe. And as you can see, for Illinois Cook County, the Potawatomi tribe, the Prairie Potawatomi tribe, the Winnebago and the Winnebago reservations are the only 4 tribes that are mentioned as having been issued land patents, even though there are more Indians that were in, or indigenous Amerindian tribes that were living in the Cook County area before colonizers even came, or settlers came. So when they don't mention all of the other tribes, I'm noticing that through further documentation and or research, I find that these are the tribes that gave them the mighty war opposition. And when, like for the instance of Tuscaroras or the Yamasee, and who else is that? The Sapion, who is that? Saponi, and I think it's a couple of other ones. Of course, it's more than that. But they put up a mightier fight, and it appears that they call themselves punishing those tribes by 1, not recognizing them, 2, not giving them land patterns, 3, no benefits or assets of the land that they took and the atrocities that they imposed on the tribes. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Potawatomi. And Prairie Potawatomi, I believe, is northern Illinois, because the Potawatomi traveled from Michigan through Indiana and Illinois. They also occupied northeast Illinois, Indiana, Illinois, Route 41, Dixie Highway, and 41 going south and 41 going north into what is that? Into Milwaukee. I mean, not just Milwaukee, but into Wisconsin, and then all the way north. So those are their trails. If we remove the streets that the colonizers developed, if we remove them and just focus on how the land was prior to street lights going up, buildings going up, roads being blown out to make highways or expressways. It was just land, and they were traveling to and fro. The Indians also lived on the river banks and wherever there was land. And that would be of the 5 lakes as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click this land pattern. There are actually 4 known land patterns, and that's ironic. And that will take us into the treaties, and then we'll get an explanation as how this came about, that there's only four indigenous persons that are listed for land patents. You'll see. I get kind of angry when I see all of this, the fights that they put up, but I also learned actually that was kind of disheartening, where you would see, okay, you know that they played the Indians against the different tribes against each other. Then you'll see where, like with the Hawaiian queen, Maui, she, was a sympathizer of the colonizer and try to fit in with them, and that's why they did her like that. That's why they, eliminated her, killed her off, and took her land. And sympathizing with them, trying to join. I saw that the Potawatomi joined the religion, or tried to assimilate when they should have kept fighting. So that actually is how they were able to play the different tribes against each other, because they would often fight with the British or the French or sympathize. So I'll go into that a little bit further. Here we have four indigenous persons, and I'm going to click this one. The second one I've already ventured off into, so I'm going to click this first one. His name appears to be Ashbum. He's of the Potawatomi tribe. This one has been canceled. So if we look here, we'll see that this is the latitude, longitude, complete location. The document is definitely an Indian allotment in the state of Illinois. It was issued in 1864, but it has been canceled. Now, I don't want to assume, and perhaps the treaty is what got this one canceled. But if I go into one of the other four of the indigenous land patents, you'll see that it's not canceled. So let's see if there's an indication as to why this one was canceled. So as you can see here, the land office issued it. The land is not on the U.S. Reservation. There is no mineral reservations. Some of these lands, like North Carolina, had gold in it. The Tuscarora was sitting on top, which is in North Carolina. They were sitting on gold. And so imagine that tribe is not even federally recognized, and is one of the tribes, like with the Powhatans, who you won't even see any land patterns up here for the Powhatan tribe as well. So it's just give you an idea of how they were punished for fighting back or waging war. The tribe is Potawatomi. February 8, 1887, council document, a total of 465.08 acres. Arrow down to see where the land is exactly. So I'm going to click, it's going to populate on its own. And it is near where another one of the patterns is. I'm going to zoom in so you can have an idea exactly what this land is. And if you're from Chicago and if you're from Illinois, then you'll know exactly now who owns this land. Going a little further, go down. The stretch of land starts at 87th Street. From the beachfront to 87th Street. And if you look here, you'll see that's Yates Street. This is Yates. So from the 87th Street beach to west to Yates, you'll see how it goes in and out, but it continues. To this might be 140 State Street. Give me 1 second. I'll be able to figure this out. That's Sibley 147. This is probably 138th right here. 138 in Torrance over to the Indiana state line. Don't quote me on that. Yes, yeah, this is the Indiana state line. Indiana state line. Parts of Wolf Lake. This not Indiana state line. But if you've been over there by Wolf Lake, that is a very pretty area. So if you did not know, now you know that that is Indian territory. And if you're driving over there, you can feel that. You have an idea that it's such beautiful, it's such a very, very pretty area. All right. That's over there where the Ford company is, the Ford manufacturing company. So this is the land. But for some reason, they gave it back, but it's still here. Now I'm going to go back to one of the other ones that's open, the Abinabi native. Okay, so as you can see here, it was issued, it is an Indian allotment for the state of Illinois, issued August 16, 1855, and it has not been canceled. It was distributed to the Potawatomi tribe February 8, 1887. I don't know what happened here. Indian allotment under statute 388, a total of 470 acres, 0.41 were issued. Township 37. And I'm going to go ahead and click the description. Is going to take us in the same area. And if I expand it, you'll see this is Indian territory. We're walking around on land that was all ours at one point, reclassified as African American. And this is where some of the tears come for me often, that this has happened, and this is, they basically seem like they've gotten away with this. And those in Chicago, we go that way all the time, especially if you hit 87 and Skyway, 95th, 127. I use those back roads all the time. When I would get off, I think go down Torrance, heading back from near 95th or the state line, I travel all through this. I sure do. The little boat here, I mean that little where the boats are dark near 138th in Torrance. I've been on the boat there. So it's just, sometimes it's disheartening. I am going to go back and go into the other two. So that was my first time going into the first one. I'm going to see what's going on with this one. This one has not been canceled. It's also an Indian allotment, 320 acres. If I go ahead and click that map and it take me there. Oh, wow. Okay, so this land is totally different. It is South Holland. South Holland. Homewood, Thornton, 171st. Wow. Directly by South Holland. Right now you have, and I went to South Suburban College. I used to live in Dalton. I used to be up through all of those streets. Now just imagine if that is forest right there. Just imagine that this is Indian territory. And in that area right there, there are new construction homes there. River Oaks. Just imagine. This is Indian territory. So when you hear people talking about those land patterns for their ancestors, it's because they are diving into something that they heard about, knew about, that they were indigenous. But then when you find out that there is more land involved, the entire United States and the islands are involved. It's just overwhelming. It gets overwhelming. And the fact that we have 4,096 ancestors, that we have to overturn to find out, what's going on, what happened, what's going on, is there any land, or there sometimes an ancestor can have family members and the land does go through those family members. But what about those ancestors that don't have any children, or they had children or nephew? This is huge. It's just something that we have to stand up to and stand up for, because if we just push it under the rug, they actually literally are getting away with it. They are getting away with it. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the story of what happened to the Indian chief of Kankakee, because there's something horrendous happened there after they killed him off. And they took that land, but that's a whole nother story. But as we can see right there, let's see how far the mall is from there. Cottage Grove. The college is right there, 170. 170. Okay, that's about it's almost going to, how much before it goes to Chicago Heights? Glenwood. It's not even Halstead. Oh, yes, it is. Okay. All right. I think I know. I'm trying to picture. I think. Okay. I'm gonna hop in my car and go back over there. I used to be all up in Dalton every day, all day, with clients, meeting clients, or after dropping my children off. So I was all through those streets in there. Then pick up the kids and back on home. Okay, the last one, I'm interested in what this one says. It is also an Indian allotment, issued October 16, 1987. It has not been canceled. It is for the tribe of Potawatomi. The authority is February 8, 1887, and the statute is 388, 126.71 total acres were distributed or allotted. And let's see where this land is. Wow, that's going close. All of that land where they host the Palooza. That's Indian territory. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's Indian territory. Wow. Sometimes this makes me, I get teared up. I really do. I really do. All right. So much for the land patterns. Now I'm going to zoom out. Hopefully, let's see. All right. Now the Potawatomi were all around the 5 lakes, so it is known as the 5 Great Lakes. Michigan City, Gary, Porter, Lake County is Indian Territory. They were in Great Bend, who else? Maryville, I believe. LaPorte. Let's see. I believe Jasper is on there. Right now, that makes me wonder about the Indiana Dunes. I have never been to the Indiana Dunes. I've been as a kid. Our school used to always go, but when it came to our eighth grade trip, our trip was canceled. I don't remember going to the dunes. I've been over there with someone who was refurbing a house, but I didn't actually go on the beach. So there's property right there when you hit Gary, and the beach is right there. All right. So you have to actually go over the railroad tracks to go east to get over there. So it's a whole nother uh, community within Gary. Yeah, at one point, I think it's like Miller Beach, because at one point it was a part of Gary or annexed from it, and they're now a part of Gary. But it's real nice territory over there. All right, so the Indians traveled on 41, which is a long lakeshore drive, right? And it goes all the way up through Skokie, which Skokie is Indian territory, Evanston, Waukegan, all of that is Indian territory, Crystal Lake. All they did was keep the names. Some of the names are still Indian names. So 41 goes all the way up. And when the Potawatomi tribe traveled, they came and they settled in this northeast territory. But I am going to now go into the all right. So I actually, well, okay. So I'm gonna go off the land patterns. If you're from Chicago, you may have already learned that Jean Baptiste Point de Sabo, who is a Haitian French explorer born free around 1745, founded Chicago. At my elementary school, we were shown his picture, and every Black History Month, we celebrated his success. He passed away in 1888. So the thing that they focused on was the picture of how he looked, that he was a Haitian French. They say Haitian French. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how they kept it to three aspects or three attributes. Okay, they showed the bust, stated that he was an Haitian Frenchman. He was a fur settler or a fur trader who settled in Chicago. Anyone from Chicago know that wasn't really celebrated. It actually wasn't. The city of Chicago wasn't even celebrating that this Black man, don't know where he came from. He supposedly traveled from Louisiana, but they didn't talk much about him. They didn't share information with us about it. They didn't celebrate his findings either. Okay. What was not told is that he had married Kitty Hawa Potawatomi, and she was of the Potawatomi tribe of Michigan. She is never mentioned, never talked about, and I have never seen any commentaries about her. Both Jean and Kitty Hawa had two children together. In all, Jean Baptiste had 8 children with 3 different women. So I'm going to show you the bust of Kitty Hawa. This is all that exists. And the fact that WBBM news radio station actually pointed this out or said anything, I'm kind of shocked about it, but they did. What you see of her, I'm not sure if you can see it. Can you see her? Not sure if you can see her. Okay, let me go back. All right, there we go. All right, there she is. This is all that exists for her is a sculpture of her bust. And I think they began working on this in 2016 or something like that, 2013. And this is all that is left. I mean, this is all that is visible for us to kind of reminisce on. We have no clue how she looks. Now, I found that ironic because the reason why I began to do the research this week about her is because no one ever talked about her. And I said, okay, I believe that Jean Baptiste du Sabo is probably Indian and not Haitian. And that is what led me to begin doing further research. And later on in this, you'll find out that he actually had a French father. That's how he was able to do the traveling that he was doing. And how do you think he came across a Potawatomi female to marry? What usually happens when an indigenous woman marries outside of her tribe and is someone other than someone in her tribe? How do we already know how that happens and why that happens? War, kidnapping, prisoner of war, overtake the tribe and then take the women. And this Haitian French admixed person did the same. He did the same. So he lived a life of royalty because his father was one of the captains of a ship and a fur trader himself, and he was a Frenchman. His mother, Jean Baptiste Sr., his mother was a slave. Now, was she indigenous as well? They're saying she was a Haitian slave, and we know that the Haitians sometimes came from some of the islands in African, quote unquote, because some people get angry when you use the term African, but I don't see any of them, checking anything other than Africa or what do you call that? African American or Black on any applications. But anyway, quote unquote, his Haitian mom is supposed to be of the African tribe. All right, so when I kind of questioned all of that as to believing, not focusing on her yet, on Kitty Hawa, but focusing on Jean, wondering if he was the one that was indigenous. And come to find out, it was she. He had a wife that I didn't know of. Kitty Hawa was Potawatomi. Okay. They actually had 2 children. Remember, he had 8 children with 3 different wives. The first wife had 6 children for him, leaving him widow in 1792. He also had 2 children of course, with Catherine, Kitty Hawa is Catherine, her Christian name, and her name got changed through christening once she became married. He actually had to convert to being a part of the Potawatomi tribe in order to marry her, and so he became Potawatomi. The Catholic Church is who married them. And as you can see, that there's always a religious organization always involved, or a missionary always involved. The two children, Jean Baptiste Point du Sable Jr. and Suzanne Point du Sable. Now, in order, of course, we already know that Catherine and Jean that Jean DuSable had to be a member of the Potawatomi tribe. And when he did, he ended up taking on a tribal symbol name, which was the eagle, and his appointed name, which was high status, Chief Black. So he was deemed a chief. Now, as you can see, which I ended up after reading and researching, that there's a lot of sympathizing, and then I had to tell myself we had to focus on the times and what was happening and the seizure of land and killing of the natives, as to how people were going along with what the colonizer was telling them to do. We just have to be honest with it. Guns shut people up, and if you don't have guns, and then you have tribes paying. If you have, a fellow tribe or a band who helps the British or the French, that increases their numbers, and then the tribe that's fighting against the British or the French become outnumbered and out weaponized. So we have to be honest about that happening. If we do not, then we would go into the tendency of saying, oh, I'm not my ancestor. Perhaps you're not your ancestor if you're not going to be someone who says, who sides with them. I have no idea. But outnumbering and out weaponizing a person could, have them submit. All right. This is what I believe. If they that they're really not going to televise anything about Kitty Hawa on a national level, because if they do, then they would have to actually teach it locally, nationally, to the city of Chicago and Cook County, and then openly admit that, or openly admit that the story of who the original or the Aboriginal indigenous are, and the Aboriginal indigenous Potawatomi tribal land belongs to. So when a person when people are asking someone to admit to stuff or to make changes, to things, they will have to first admit to something. And if that admission causes them to have to give up something, and in this case, land and assets and royalty and control, it's going to be a long time coming before any of that happens. And I hope it's soon, but it's just, it's too much land involved. It's too much heinous crimes involved. And to this day, you still have crimes with children, right? Kidnapping and trafficking. They're the colonizer, and that's where this is coming from. Also, in Chicago, Chicago does not have any reservations. So, FYI, they don't have any reservations in the state of Illinois as well. And Kitty Hawa was indeed the daughter of a Potawatomi chief. It is also stated by a French interpreter that Catherine and Jean were married twice. The second time was at the mission of the Holy Family of uh, Casaquayas in 1784. And this is by French interpretation. I had to actually copy and paste and then interpret the French language in a interpretation website. So I actually challenge everyone, if you're not already doing it, to at least tell the stories of the North and South East Coast Aboriginal, Indigenous, and American Indians, and don't cease to do it, because they think that we have forgotten. They think that we don't know. And when you look at it being on TikTok, everybody's not on TikTok. Everybody that's on Instagram is not on TikTok. Everybody that's on Instagram is probably chasing a bag and not focusing on any of the information that is on TikTok or YouTube, because YouTube has just as much information regarding these subjects as well. So you got different groups of people that you'd be shocked how many people choose to push stuff like this under the rug because they've been through a lot over the years, and you get oral histories being passed along that is dangerous to even talk about such subjects, or even get people, even share the history or the information about the land and the atrocities that happen. But if we look at it, if with Maury, they just did the same thing again. That's exactly what happened to our ancestors. We have to be realistic about it. It's exactly what has happened to our ancestors. All right. Now here's a point. I'm sure with Jean Baptiste having a Haitian mother, which gives her one drop, or more than one drop, and then a French father that they kind of hid that. You know, we had to know when we think about Haitian and French, we think it's automatic. But the French occupied Haiti, so and forced the Haiti language, or I mean not the Haiti language, but the French language upon them. So when we think about a person being Haitian French, we kind of get lost in it. But if we say something about a French man, we know that he comes from France. So the admixture with all of this, you know, Black people kind of get denied the ability to claim certain stuff out of 4,096 ancestors. Some people like going 100%, oh, I'm African, 100%, oh, I'm indigenous, but we have 4,096 ancestors, and they might not have the same ethnicity. All right. I you know, something else that I was thinking about, it actually had to do with their descendants. Now, we know two names. That's, oh man, when I think about it, remember Jean Baptiste had 8 children. 2 of them were by Kirihawa. All right. So we're gonna move the 6 to the side. We're gonna move the 6 to the side. Let's focus on the 2 Potawatomi children with Kirihawa. Where are they at? Where are the descendants to Kirihawa's children? Usually, when you type that in, we know we know their names. When you're researching, that all of that information is popping up. So I'm telling you, when I find that somebody is missing or something, it's because they don't want that information to be told. And here, the information for Kirihawa's children is not really known. After those after she, her with her two children, I also try to think about um, the times. What happened during that time? You having the Trail of Tears happening. You have the Indian Wars going on. You have the treaties going on, and I've already mentioned on my TikTok and on the YouTube page about the Potawatomi Treaty of 1832 and 1836. So there's a 4-year span. By 1836, that treaty was broken. Land was taken permanently. But prior to 1832, what I didn't share with you, who all know what I did share on between TikTok and YouTube, there are other Potawatomi treaties that were broken. There were other Potawatomi treaties. So if you take the time and you look them up, you'll see that. I'm going to go into those treaties so you can have an idea of how they look. All right, here we are with the 1832 Treaty of Potawatomi. All right, this is not the first treaty. This is actually the second to the last one, I believe. Here in the 1832 treaty, remember that the Potawatomi had the Indian Territory, Michigan, Illinois, and some of Wisconsin. And actually, it's a couple of more states. I think Iowa is in it. I think Kentucky is mentioned. I'll go over that as well. When it comes to the Potawatomi tribe. And of course, there are like 6 other tribes and bands that are included in the Potawatomi tribal land removal. In the 1832 treaty, they even mentioned Kankakee here in a direct line to a point on the Kankakee River. Wow. Okay. So I actually didn't know that. With the Potawatomi tribe, with the Treaty of 1832, you will see that they actually gave out tracts of land. The chiefs that were involved with the signing of relinquishing the land, the U.S. agents or the British agents that were involved with the removal, the redirection of where they actually wanted them to go, the demand by the Potawatomi tribe for additional items like horses and other needs. But by 1832, and this is for land near like Gary, Portage, East Chicago, Hammond, Griffin, Portage. By 1836, that land was permanently taken from them and additional monies were given to them. So when we think about the Ho-Chunk Casino and all of that, now that makes sense as to why the natives were giving casinos to get their money back. That means they're getting their money back from their own people. All the blacks that's going there basically are their own people. It's just a continued cycle of mess. It's just a continued cycle. All right, so if you go ahead and write down the tribal treaties database, you'll see that Oklahoma State University libraries run it. take the time and go and look over the treaties yourself. They're self-explanatory. They are clear. It's not any legal terminology that's really high tech that will stop you from being able to read and comprehend it. I've read them on my podcast, and so I'm thinking about my podcast not being for actual readings and just have my lives for readings. So I'm thinking about that because that treaty went into three postings, and it actually should have been one within one complete hour. Had it been in within 1 hour, it would have been more informal, and it wouldn't have been any pauses and breakups and happened to go into podcast 2 and 3. So I know actually what happened with me with that taping. I actually got frustrated by the third one because when it comes to pinpointing where I left off and editing and cutting, that third podcast did not get off. It never was meant for it to be in 3 podcasts. So I do, please forgive me for that. And I will make sure that there are not any more 3, at least not with treaties. All right. So this is the Treaty of Potawatomi. Please take the time to review that one at another time. And remember that the children of the American Indians were reclassified, and their descendants to this day are still deemed and have been deemed and are still deemed African Americans. People can deny it, they can lie, they can do all that they want. You have people that won't even take the time to even look at the documents. I've read the documents. I've been reading these documents. I actually I started my first ancestry without the DNA testing fully by 2003. And I think I was at work looking on the, prior to 2003, going into the website, creating an account, and even in, I think it was probably 87, 88 is when Ancestry.com first appeared on the TV channel with www.ancestry.com. And I wanted to take the test. I called them because that number was, as you can see, flashing on this screen. On regular local TV, I called that number, and the price of it was nearly $7,900, $7,900 to take the Ancestry DNA test back in '87. So the fact the test originally was not for us. It wasn't designed for us. And anybody that sits and argues and says that that doing DNA is garbage and trash, they need to rethink, because it initially wasn't for us. They initially did not create that test for us. Yeah, they create other tests and diseases for us. We know that is a fact, and that's history. So we do know that they are capable of doing the things that they have done and continue to do to us. But the ancestry test initially was not created for us. So then we fast forward, the test went down to $99, $100, and oftentimes, $100, $99, and oftentimes down to $45 is the lowest I've seen. Should you be cautious of them? Yes. Will they take our DNA and do other things with it, down the line? Yes. Have they already started? Yes. And I made a decision on whether I was going to allow that to happen. But when I think about it, they already have my DNA. They already have my fingerprints. They already have it. I'm not going to do other stuff. I'm not going to be foolishly like a sheep and do other stuff. But they already have it. I've had 4 children. They've already had it. Placenta, they already got it. blood tests, urine tests, they already have all of that. They control the medical records. They control the birth certificates. They control the death certificates, the wills. They control the land patents. They already have all of this. So yeah, meanwhile, did I think about in the future what could happen? Sure did. But I went ahead and took the chance, and I found out a lot. I made it to the 1300s on both sides. Found Indian chiefs in my family, 5 or 6 of them on my maternal side for sure. And so I'm going to move forward with my findings. I'm going to continue to find. I've also had my documents when I found out about the Muscogee tribe on my maternal side in 2020. A month before COVID shut down, I actually had my documents notarized to be submitted to the MCN, which is the Muscogee Creek Nation. I already had them notarized. So I don't. What is so discouraging is sometimes is when you get on TikTok, like people question all that, and then they tell you who you are, what you, as if you don't know anything about you, you don't know anything about your ancestors. That you, if you do DNA, that's dumb and stupid. If you do try to go and enroll, you're chasing a cart. And you have both the Aboriginals on TikTok saying it, and you also have the Native Americans, which is Siberian, Alaskan, Ukraine, Russians, Asiatics saying the same thing. So I'm not one of the people that lack confidence where I let anyone control me like that, ever. I've been like this all my life. All right, so the actual enrollment will be something that I choose to do when I'm ready to do it. Like I said, I already had them documents notarized. I will show you them at another time. I'll scan them, print screen them, and show you where you will see that notary seal. All right, moving forward. In case you didn't know, I don't know why I'm, but it's definitely about DeSable. How do I continue? In 2009, finally, Jean Baptiste Point du Sable was honored with a bust. He also has a marker because his house was directly on Michigan and Wacker Drive. And if you walk down there, when it becomes that pivot at Wacker and Michigan, you'll see a gold marker on the floor, on the ground as well. So he finally got recognition. He finally got a bust placed by the Millennial Park in downtown Chicago by the waterfall. And still not much is known about the wife. I'm going to try and dig deeper about which chief her father is, because on the treaties you will see that the indigenous names are mentioned with the allotment of cash or whatever they gave them, or a cash and land. So you'll see it between the two treaties. I'm going to go dig further because I actually wanted to close this out. I'm going to dig a little bit further to see if Kittihawa is mentioned in those tribes, but I think I saw it on the 1836 tribe. No, not the 1836 treaty, the 1832 treaty. So I'm going to do that. She is of royalty, and her children are royalty, and I'm concerned about where are her descendants today, because they actually are still royalty. Some could be in Wisconsin, some could be in Oklahoma, because a lot of the admixed U.S. agent kidnapped sent majority of their children and the women that they married or the women that they had children by to Oklahoma, where they were meant to be whitewashed completely. This is part of agent records. Where are the children? Interesting to know. Now, any of you, I'm not for certain if I'm not for certain if any of you are aware of how many tribes are in Wisconsin. There are a lot of tribes in Wisconsin. I've been in Milwaukee. I'm talking about let's narrow it down to Milwaukee. In Milwaukee, if you look at any of the tribal members, a lot of them look like Maya Rudolph. And Maya Rudolph is Minnie Riperton's daughter. They favor her a lot. They are golden. They look like Minnie Riperton and Maya Rudolph. A lot. I've been around them. A lot of them reside in Wisconsin. So if I move forward, I can explain how they got actually to the Wisconsin area. All right, give me a second. All right, so let's get to this. That's not the one. Thank you for staying with me. I believe I already know who it is because it's two persons that have been definitely keeping up with my content and my TikTok content. And then, so I really, really do appreciate you. All right. I'm going to share the screen with one more finding. And this is going to kind of sum up a lot of my points and some of the things that I was concerned about. Only thing that hasn't been summed up is where are their ancestors today. I would like to know how they look, where they reside. It seems like they almost silenced them, and we know that they scared them, threatened them with Indian schools and just overall torture, because they know the oral stories of their ancestors actually being literally tortured and murdered off. So, and they're silent. They silenced them. All right. So, further research after following that trail to down 41, some of the removals with the treaties, the other treaties, then we're going to end up, as you can see, Milwaukee is now telling the story of the Potawatomi. All right, to the left here, and what I'm using for reference is the Milwaukee Public Museum exhibit regarding the Potawatomi tribe. The tribes mentioned are the Ho-Chunk, Menominee. Menominee Falls, Wisconsin is beautiful. Been around the Ho-Chunk, never been in it. Ojibwe is a tribe that was near the Potawatomi in Michigan as well, and Illinois. The Oneida tribe originally was with the Algonquin and the Tuscarora there in North Carolina. Of course, the Potawatomi tribe All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start reading. The Potawatomi are the Potawatomi are an Algonquin speaking tribe which has lived in the Great Lakes region for at least 4 centuries. Can you see it? Yes, for 4 centuries. Oral traditions of the Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Odawa assert that at one time, all 3 tribes were one people who lived at the Straits of Mackinac. From there, they split off into 3 separate groups, and the Potawatomi were keepers of the sacred fire. As such, they were the leading tribe of the alliance the 3 Indian nations formed after separating from one nation. Linguistic, archaeological, and historical evidence suggests that the Potawatomi, the Ojibwe, and Odawa did indeed descend from a common ethnic origin. The 3 languages are almost identical. In their own language, the word Potawatomi means keepers of the sacred fire, but they call themselves Nashnabik, which means the true people. When Jean Nicolet arrived at Green Bay, and we know that Green Bay is in Wisconsin, in 1634, he met a few Potawatomi there. At this time, the Potawatomi lived in Michigan, and any Potawatomi at Green Bay were most probably visiting. So imagine leaving Michigan, going around the lake, Michigan, or through the lake Michigan on a boat or a raft. Don't know how they got there. And more than likely, Route 41 up out of Michigan, around Indiana, into Illinois, along the coast of what we have, the South Shore, Lakeshore Drive, leading to Sheridan, Waukegan, and then going into Wisconsin. All right, where am I? So, and then Green Bay is actually north, I believe, north of Milwaukee. All right, so when Jean Nicolet arrived at Green Bay in 1634, he met a few Potawatomi there. At this time, the Potawatomi lived in Michigan, and any Potawatomi at Green Bay were most probably visiting. This situation changed dramatically in the 1640s and 1650s when the League of the Iroquois in upstate New York began to raid Indian tribes. That would explain how the Oneida got from North Carolina to New York and then somehow in Wisconsin. All right, so in upstate New York began to raid Indian tribes throughout the Great Lakes region to monopolize the regional fur trade. Remember that Jean Point du Sable was a part of the fur trade. Like other tribes in the southern peninsula of Michigan, the Potawatomi were forced westward by the Iroquois onslaught by 1665. The tribe relocated on the Door County Peninsula in Wisconsin. When the Iroquois threat receded after 1700, the Potawatomi moved south along the western shore of Lake Michigan. They also moved back into Michigan when they had occupied before the Iroquois Wars. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm going to repeat a statement. When the Iroquois threat receded after 1700, the Potawatomi moved south along the western shore of Lake Michigan. They also moved back into Michigan, which they had occupied before the Iroquois Wars. By 1800, their tribal estate included northern Illinois, southeastern Wisconsin, northern Indiana, southern Michigan, and northwestern Ohio. Wars involving Europeans. And you'll see the twist here when they become sympathizers. Like other tribes in the Great Lakes region, the Potawatomi became trading partners and military allies of the French. When the Fox Indians rose up in Wisconsin against the French between 1712 and 1735, the Potawatomi and other tribes participated in many battles on the side of the French. Beginning in 1731 and continuing into the 1740s, many Potawatomi warriors aided the French in putting down the recalcitrant Chickasaw. And I believe the Chickasaw was North tribe, and for some reason I kept thinking it was a Southern tribe, but more about the Chickasaw at another time as well. Some war parties went as far south as present-day Tennessee. Between 1752 and 1756, the Potawatomi again aided the French, this time against the Illinois tribe, who were driven out of northern Illinois. It's ironic that they did not name the Illinois tribe unless the Chickasaw is an Illinois tribe. The Potawatomi remain loyal to France, and this is what their issue is. And we're going to see how they were treated after all of this loyalty. The Potawatomi remained loyal to France during the century of warfare against Great Britain. Between 1689 and 1763, the French and British fought a series of 4 wars to control over North America. The Potawatomi fought in the Third War, King George's War, in 1746 through 47. They went to Montreal, and from there they attacked the British colonies as far east as New York and New England. The most important of the colonial wars was the French and Indian War, or 7 Years' War, from 1754 to 1763. The Potawatomi continued to ally themselves with the French, as did other tribes from Wisconsin and the Great Lakes region. They fought in many famous battles of the war, such as Braddock's defeat in Pennsylvania in 1755 and the infamous massacre of Fort William Henry in New York in 1757. Despite their loyalty, the Potawatomi were unable to stem the tide of war, which the British finally won in 1763. We're not even at 1776 yet. So here they are still fighting. The British is fighting the French for territory, because remember, the French had the western part of the United States. They had already taken over the Navajo and all of those tribes in California, the Southwest tribes. You have the French with Haiti, some of the islands, and certain territories east of the Mississippi. And you see their loyalty. The Milwaukee researchers, or this museum, you see that they are pointing out that the loyalty is what got them. Instead of sticking together with the tribes to defeat the British and the French, they actually sided with the opposition. Despite their loyalty, the Potawatomi were unable to stem the tide of war, which the British finally won in 1763. Continued friction with the English. With this victory, all French possessions in Canada and the Midwest reverted to British control. The Potawatomi remained wary of their new colonial overlords, particularly the Potawatomi at Chicago and Milwaukee. In 1763, an Odawa chief named Pontiac, Michigan, led a revolt against the British, which involved many Great Lakes tribes, including the Potawatomi. The British eventually put down the rebellion, and they established better diplomatic and economic relations with the tribes to prevent any such recurrences. Many Potawatomi bands developed strong ties to the British, but the Potawatomis of Wisconsin along the western shore of Lake Michigan remained anti-British in their sympathies. This situation became aggravated when the Potawatomi at Milwaukee established trade links to St. Louis in 1760. This small French settlement was part of the Louisiana colony, which the French gave the Spanish at the end of the 7 Years' War. The Spanish and the British had been bitter enemies for almost 2 centuries, and British officials in Canada became concerned when Milwaukee Indians began to trade openly with French traders in the Spanish colony in 1770. In the Spanish colony. In 1776, the American Revolution began, and although not formally allied, the United States and Spain both fought Great Britain at the same time. A Virginian militia officer, George Rogers Clark, brought a small army of frontiersmen into Illinois in 1778 and conquered the Midwest for the United States. Clark met with Sigonauck and a Potawatomi chief from Milwaukee and won him over to the American cause. Now remember, they were anti-British. Along with another Milwaukee Potawatomi, Nakawan and Sigonauck effected a diplomatic coup over the course of the next 2 years and managed to turn Potawatomi villages around the southern shore of Lake Michigan against the British. When the British tried to recruit local Indians for their cause, they made little headway. In 1780, Sigonauck and Nakawan attacked the British force of Indians and French Canadians. The next year, Sigonauck led an Indian force from St. Louis and attacked a British post in southern Michigan. So there you see where the tribes actually resided at one time. Milwaukee, you know that is an indigenous name. Indigenous land. If you've been anywhere in Milwaukee near Brown Deer Road, you know that behind Brown Deer Road, there are reservations there. And it's not like you have to drive a mile into it. The chain is right there because I've seen it. The chain is right there, and there is the reservation. Menominee Falls. You go west of Brown Deer, there's beautiful Menominee Falls. Where the mall is or was, let's say 15 years ago, because I believe they torn down the Brown Deer Mall or whatever the name it was. That mall was near Menards. It was originally Chippewa Indians territory. And so the settlers came and took over that land. It actually was all wooded area, was all trees. So they took over that land, and the lumber that you know that Menards to sell, that's where they get that lumber from. That's Indian land. So Menards and the settlers of that land in Menards has to give the Chippewa Valley tribe royalties from Menards. in case you didn't know. That's Indian territory. So next time you think about Menards, you'll know what's going on with that. Who owns it? It comes, all those trees were torn down. That was Indian land right there, brown deer. And brown deer is very, very pretty. It is it's some pretty land. All right, so moving forward to the U.S. expansion and attempted removal. The Americans won the war for the independence and took the entire Midwest from the British in the peace settlement of 1783. Afterward, Great Lakes tribes soon found out that Americans sought to purchase their lands for white settlers. The United States fought a bloody war against the Ohio Indians from 1790 to 1794. Potawatomi from Michigan and Indiana fought in these battles against Americans. This war further turned many Indians against the United States. Even Singanock had a change of heart. Later, many Potawatomi became adherents of Tenskwatawa, or the Shawnee prophet, and his brother Tecumseh after 1805. The Shawnee prophet and Tecumseh preached a doctrine of resisting American expansion onto Indian lands in the Trans-Appalachian region, and the two brothers put together a pan-Indian military alliance that fought on the side of the British during the War of 1812. Once the war started, the Potawatomi defeated the American garrison at Fort Dearborn in Chicago. The British and their Indian allies maintained a strong hold over Wisconsin and other parts of the Midwest, but this did not stop the British from returning these lands to the Americans when the war ended in 1814. The Potawatomi fell on hard times in the 20 years after the war and were often unable to hunt and grow enough food to eat. They had little choice except to cede their lands to the United States in exchange for money so that they could survive. The state of Illinois was rapidly settled by whites, and the governor and other elected officials were anxious to move the Potawatomi out of the state. The Potawatomi ceded some of their land in northwestern Illinois and southwestern Wisconsin in 1829. Many Illinois Potawatomi actively supported the United States Army during the Black Hawk War in 1832 to prevent or delay being removed westward, but this strategy backfired. On September 26, 1833, the Potawatomi of Illinois and Wisconsin signed the Treaty of Chicago, which ceded the last of their lands to the United States. The United States began removing the Potawatomi off of their Wisconsin lands between 1835 and 1838. During this time, the Potawatomi of the Midwest began to fracture and moved to many far-flung locations. Potawatomi holdings in Wisconsin. Some went with the Kickapoo to Texas and Kansas, while others migrated to Canada. Most Wisconsin Potawatomi went to Iowa and later to Kansas and settled on reservations granted to them by the United States. Despite this, many stayed in Wisconsin. About 200 of the Potawatomi who went to Iowa and Kansas returned to Wisconsin and settled in the vicinity of the Wisconsin Rapids. They joined a group known as the Strolling Potawatomi, who had moved into northern Wisconsin to resist removal westward. The federal government attempted a final removal of the Potawatomi from Wisconsin in 1851, but many continued to reside in Wisconsin. During the late 19th century, the Potawatomi made their living primarily by working for white-owned logging companies. By 1907, the total number of Potawatomi residing in Wisconsin was 457. In 1913, the United States Congress determined that the Wisconsin Potawatomi were due money promised to them for their land cessions in earlier treaties. For many years, only the Kansas Potawatomi had received this money. Congress allotted $447,339 with $150,000 to be used by the Wisconsin Potawatomi to buy their own land, which was then put under federal trust for the tribe. Many Potawatomi families purchased 40 to 80-acre farms in Forest County, Wisconsin, while some bought land in Wood County. The roughly 15,000 acres in Forest County constitute the Wisconsin Potawatomi's reservation today. The Wisconsin Potawatomi are federally recognized, but are included on the tribal roll of the Kansas Potawatomi. In recent years, the Wisconsin Potawatomi have increased the amount of reservation land they have under federal trust. In 1990, the tribe bought about 7 acres of land in one of their old village sites, Milwaukee, and opened a high stakes bingo hall 1 year later. In the same year, the tribe acquired the old 11.5-acre Concordia College campus site in Milwaukee. The campus had been home to the Indian Community School of Milwaukee since 1986, and the school's board of directors entered into an agreement with the Potawatomi to put the site into federal trust status in the tribe's name. The Potawatomi currently lease the site to the school, which is an independent entity from the tribe. So this actually kind of explain how the tribe was in one location around the Great Lakes, including Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and during many of the Indian wars were pushed westward during these fights, given treaties and reoccupied land, and then permanently land taken from them. Now, where does Kitihawa Dusabo, where does she come in at? Which chief was her father? Which Potawatomi chief was her father? And where did they reside after being married? Were they pushed to Wisconsin? Did they go to Oklahoma, or Kansas, as most would think? Where is the Potawatomi? Where is Kitihawa Potawatomi descendants? Now we remember that Jean Baptiste had 8 children, and so 6 of them were with his widowed wife prior to Kitihawa. Where are those children, and what is more that we can learn about her? I believe her name appears to be like Czechoslovakian. I'm not for certain if his first wife, Elizabeth, the one that he had the 6 children with, if she was actually an indigenous woman, or was she of European race? So that kind of ties in all of my research prior to the my findings that I have already posted on YouTube and posted on the TikTok. So you can tie all of that in. It basically started with the land patterns that I was researching within my own tree, and not because I have Potawatomi. Now I have some Algonquin that actually came from the Tuscarora tribe, but when you get down to the Muskogee Creek and all of that, if we keep them from being egg mixed, then they wouldn't go into Algonquin. But because the tribes were constantly at war with the British and the French and other tribes, the tribes intermingled and they became admixed with different tribal DNA and blood. All right. So I am going to conclude this presentation of the Potawatomi history. I believe that the Milwaukee Public Museum definitely summed up a lot about the Potawatomi tribe. And again, it correlates with definitely with Kittihawa. Don't forget that Jean Baptiste became a Potawatomi, a part of the Potawatomi tribe, and a Potawatomi chief when he married Kittihawa. Okay, so I'm gonna try to research a little bit more. I don't know if it's gonna be a presentation or not about it, but just knowing where did Jean Baptiste, where was his last residence, and how was his life in between that? Was he a part of the wars? What actually happened to the DeSabo family and their descendants? Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to definitely put them within the chat. While actually on this live, I didn't see anything in the chat. While actually on this live, I didn't see anything in. Yeah, so I have an echo there. So when I try to pull up the chat to see anything, I don't see anything. So hopefully you can tie in my Potawatomi Jean Point du Sabo post here at YouTube in the podcast or on my TikTok feed. All right. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can share the post as well. Thank you for joining me on this live. Thank you for joining my channel. If you are in need of any of the genealogy assistance, you can visit my website at www.myhistoryverified.com. And there is actually a contact page that you can fill out for the assistance, or you can leave messages under the comments. And lastly, please visit my shop. You will see that there are mugs and t-shirts with the My History Verified logo on it. All right, until then, don't forget to check out my podcast and any of my shorts that kind of lead up to my next research, and join me while I journey to find my ancestry and genealogy. All right. Thank you for joining.